Now we have Barry Kinane. Am I pronouncing your name correctly there, Barry?
That's correct, yeah.
Very good. So, Barry, you're in the car there. I take it you're in Wicklow. Now, I mean, I'm going just on a few bits of information, so you're going to have to forgive me. But we thought, let's just start recording. Let's have the chat. Let's see where the road takes us on this, because it's quite interesting. You've come forward with a bit of information. And I was thinking about it initially. I was thinking, maybe, maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should. And then I was thinking about it some more, and I was thinking, no, this is really, really important. And I absolutely understand why you've come forward with it. But first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just a regular Joe Soap, play a bit of music, have a job, family, and just that's it. Nothing spectacular or unusual. Look, I was just before 2020. I was just a normal person going about my day-to-day business. Hadn't got a clue really. When this supposed virus came from Wuhan, I suppose I was compliant. Was kind of did what I was told, etc. Initially, followed all the rules. Was watching the TV. I got sick of listening to Tony Houlihan counting out his figures. I actually turned off the TV, and I haven't turned it on since. I haven't watched TV since then. And so the mind control stopped working on me the minute I think I turned off the TV, because when it came around to the time of the vaccines, I knew it was an absolute scam at that stage, and that's really when I woke up. But there was other things that I thought were unusual as well. I could see a lot of different things that were happening that just didn't make sense to me. Actually, there's so many things that didn't make sense to me, but I kind of went along with the consensus on things, because that's what people do. They don't tend to, question things too much. But I kind of regard myself as one of these people that went through life with kind of one eye open. And then all the pennies seemed to drop at the same time in 2021. And it was I found it kind of a traumatic time when I kind of realized what was going on. I won't say I had a nervous breakdown, but I probably had something close to one. And that's when I began to really see what was the whole agenda behind all of this. Yeah, probably went
Well, I
down.
mean, I can understand that, because there was so much to process. There still is for all of us. It doesn't actually stop when you realize just how pervasive the lie is, and how many people are involved, and the fact that people are willing to throw family members onto the bus, whatever it takes to protect the lie. The lie is so important in all of this. But you've come forward with some information on Edward Timmins, and he is the TD for Wicklow. And I have a video lined up here, and this was when he was canvassing for votes. So this will give people just a little idea as to who he is.
Here, I'm a county councillor on Wicklow County Council, and have been for the past 20 years, been first elected in 2004. My father served the community of County Wicklow for 49 years. He became a councillor at the age of 22 in 1950. He was elected to the Dáil in 1968. My brother also dedicated 20 years of his life to national politics. Even today, I still see the marks of the things he did and the people he helped, and I constantly meet people who have great memories of his time in politics. If I get to the Dáil, a couple of my main aims would be, firstly, to reflect all the problems I'm seeing on a day-to-day basis in our county, and to bring them to national politics and get those problems solved at a national level. Secondly, I want to bring my vast business experience to the operation of how politics works.
Okay, so that is Edward Timmins, and he's saying there that he's going to bring whatever's locally, he's going to bring that up onto national level. So there's quite a bit going on locally. Just tell us, how do you know Edward Timmins, or how did this information come to you, let's say?
Yeah, well, firstly, what prompted me to contact you was I was watching your YouTube channel, and you'd picked up on an article about this new committee for for
It's,
cardiovascular disease that
yes.
in all. So it kind of jogged me memory, because when the elections were happening, I had a list of questions I had for each politician that would call to the door. The first politician to call to the door was Edward Timmins, his wife. And my first question on my list of questions was, have you had the booster? And if not, why not? That was the question I was going to ask every politician. So the minute the door was answered, I said, hello. I says, have you had the booster? And if not, why not? And she said to me, no. She says, I got a clot after the first, I think it was the last booster. It's a few months ago, so I can't remember specifically, but she said she had a clot after the last booster, and she says her words were, I'm done with the vaccines. And I said, were you aware that 20,000 people had died in excess since 2021? She said she was. And then we discussed a number of local issues, and she said to contact Edward directly about those issues. So I'd kind of forgotten about it, to be honest with you. And it wasn't until I saw the article then that it kind of jogged my memory. And look, I
Yeah,
think it
because
needs
when
to be
I looked at
said,
the article and I was like, well, where, it's all well and good having this group for its stroke and heart group, or an Oireachtas group. It's all well and good having that. But if you are omitting the salient fact, if you're omitting the elephant in the room, which is the after effects of these trial injections, and,
Mhm.
Patrick E. Walsh has done incredible work. We're counting at least over 22,000 extra dead since the rollout of these injections. And we have these reports, and yet you scroll down through and you're like, well, surely they're going to mention the excess deaths. Surely they're going to say, well, there's been an effect from the trial injections, but it's nowhere to be seen. And then we get the
No.
news that Edward Timmins' wife suffered an adverse reaction from one of these injections. And yet there's this omertà. And I did get in touch with Edward Timmins. Let me just pull it up there now. I got in touch by email, and then I also, because I got no response, I thought, well, if she hadn't have had a reaction, he would have got in touch and said, what are you talking about? Let me just share the screen here. So then I'm being cheeky enough, really. I put it on X. I'm like, come on, So, I mean, cheeky enough, but also polite. Deputy Timmins, can you tell us if there's a personal reason behind your support for the Oireachtas Heart and Stroke group? Anyone you know who's been affected by the COVID-19 trial injections? Thank you. And then this has been put out in the public domain. So therefore, it should be allowed that we ask some questions about it. And, if his wife suffered some serious, clot is very, very serious. Well, why not be open about it?
Yeah, look, there's a cover up going on. Like, you just have to look back at the debate in the Oireachtas in I think it was October or November 2023, when Matty McGrath brought the subject of excess deaths into the Dáil, which was based on Patrick E. Walsh's work. And it's on the Dáil record, and a lot of the politicians in the Dáil at the time, I think some of the Healy Rays, and I think John McGuinness from Kilkenny, and there was a few more politicians were questioning that these excess deaths were caused because of these vaccinations. But that was it. And then there was obviously a few politicians that defended the vaccines. And then there was Paul Murphy there that admitted that there was excess deaths, but he said it was something to do with COVID. And what's anyone said about it since 2023? Nothing. And now everyone knows, like, everyone in this country knows somebody or has a family member or someone that they either know or they suspect that their illness or death, whatever, came shortly after taking these experimental injections. And I just, like, this is not, like, Edward Timmins' wife came to the door. She's a nice woman. This is not an attack on her or an attack on him. This is really just it's just to bring the attention to this, to ask Edward Timmins to stand up and bring this debate back into the Dáil about the excess deaths and the injuries, because it's this, what he's doing here, while commendable, it's not enough. Everyone knows, and there's no point in hiding behind the elephant in the room. It just has to stop, and people have to be brave. They have to stand up and call it out for what it is. Look, I wouldn't normally be coming on camera. I'm reluctantly doing this, but I have to do it, because if I don't do it, then I'm being a coward as well. So everybody needs to just, politicians, doctors. I see Marcus de Bruin, fair play to him. He's coming out now. He's standing up, and I think there's a Professor Lambert now that is backing him on this. So he's standing up. There's more people beginning to stand up, and I just think really what it does is the more people that start standing up, then it'll just become infectious, and then everyone will start rallying behind everybody else, and this is where we bring this, because what I feel is if this is not addressed now and there's not something done about it, they're gonna try this again, and they're gonna roll out another pipe of injections for whatever. But I have my thoughts on that, because I don't, whether they pull off another scandemic or not, I don't know, but I know they're not ending with these mRNA shots. They're going to bring them out for personalized cancer jabs or whatever. This whole mRNA technology is advancing at great speed, and this is something that's huge money invested in, and it's being protected. And look, I can understand that if Edward Timmins came out with something like this, he could probably get himself in trouble. But look, I'm doing him the favor.
You are. You're doing us all a favor, and you're right to say that you do need to speak and show your face. And like, this is the whole thing. This is what everybody's afraid of, and people are terrified of doing this. And all it is telling the truth and shaming the devil. I mean, that's all it is. Is just even if I ask a normal question, everybody can turn on me and say, how could you ask this question? Even questions are problematic in this environment, which is just the most outrageous place to be. But let's play a little video of, I think this is Simon Harris endorsing Edward Timmins.
Your family, for our community across County Wicklow and for Ireland. Edward Timmins here is a really important part of that team, and he's already delivering for you, working so hard on the ground across our county. But I need him elected to the Dáil.
I have been meeting and hearing directly from you on the issues that matter to you and your family. Give me the chance to deliver for you.
Today, I'm asking for your vote for this, the Fine Gael team for Wicklow. Vote Fine Gael for a new energy and a secure future.
And this is the thing, people have to tell Edward Timmins what really matters to them, and they have to be honest about it, really honest about it. And that means saying, what were we forced to take there? What were in those injections? And why aren't we looking at the excess deaths properly? And whatever family member got whatever afterwards, we're talking cancers, clots, heart attacks, sudden deaths, the whole range of adverse reactions that people aren't talking about. And yes, people die naturally, and yes, there are accidents, and yes, there are suicides in amongst all of that, but we just need to have an open and clear conversation. That's all we're looking for. I mean, it's not that hard really, but the truth seems to be so difficult in this time of lies.
Yeah, but see, it's a bit like, I kind of compare it to a bit like the 70s and the 80s, when people were all whispering around the parish that the priest was a bit dodgy, but nobody was nobody was saying it. So the barriers get broke down over time. So it'll be it'll come out, like, and it'll be the biggest scandal of all time. That's provided that they don't throw us into another crisis between now and then. And anything could happen, but that's what I compare it to. And people were afraid then to put their head above the parapet back in the 70s or 80s, or criticize the church for whatever, for many reasons. It's the same. It's just the same thing. People are just afraid, and they just need to get over it and just say it for what it is.
Yeah, have a little bit of moral backbone, because as you say, yeah, people knew back then, and then 30, 40 years pass, and then it's okay to talk about it, and everybody goes tut tut tut, isn't that terrible that happened? But we know, we have this in real time, we have all the receipts. There is a management now of the narrative again. You see, there's always this management, there's always the PR gurus stepping in, pushing forward charming personalities who are going to manage how we respond and our perception to what has happened. And I think we have to be incredibly careful of that. I mean, we have the likes of, say, RT presenter Claire Byrne, who managed the first one and made sure that people got injections into their arms, along with Joe Duffy, along with Ryan Tubridy. And she's practically salivating talking about the next pandemic with Professor Luke O'Neill, the pair of them, who were so instrumental to the first fake pandemic.
Yeah.
And now they're talking about the next one. And I just wonder, are enough people aware? There's whisperings and all the rest, but people are still afraid to say things out loud. And that's troubling.
Yeah, well, it's like that debate in November 2023 in the Dáil about the excess deaths. That debate happened in the Dáil, but there was nothing about the excess deaths then in the media. The media is completely, they won't speak about it. Like you just have to look at any of the red tops or any of the newspapers every day, and you're seeing a tribute to some footballer down the country, some teenage child that died in their sleep or dropped dead after playing a football game or whatever. It's everywhere. But yet nobody's asking what the cause of it is. You even see there, even that article with Edward Timmins, there's nothing questioning why there are 18,000 people with cardiovascular disease in the county, or there's no one asking the reasons why. I think there might have been an article even in the Independent this week from, I think it was Eilish O'Regan or somebody, about I think it was in a few different places. It was about the rise in heart disease, but nobody's addressing the elephant in the room. Like, everyone knows. Like, you just have to, like, I'd be around, I'd meet people here and there. Like, I play music, so I bump into people all the time. I get talking to people. And I don't, whenever I have a conversation, I'll always put a little hint in about something, and the conversation might go towards the whole scamdemic, as I call it. And you'll get people will tell you things. They will tell you a story about such and such. My aunt had a stroke, or my cousin, or this or that, and and then the regret. But then there's a lot of people still believe that the vaccine saves them. But there's more and more people out there now that know that these so-called vaccines are not good. And sure, look, you can even tell. Sure, there's only, what was it, 5% of healthcare workers are taking them now, or some very small percentage. So, like, the healthcare workers, they know, they see it, they see what's happening.
Now, funny that you mentioned Eilish O'Regan, and I've just pulled up an article here on Substack. This is by Patrick E. Walsh. And, these awards, this is the thing about these health journalists. So she's won this award. This is an old story. It's from 2011. But fair play to Patrick. He circled Pfizer, sponsored by Pfizer, in the background. You see, this is how compromised the journalists are. I know Eilish's brother, he did die suddenly, but he had a tumor in his leg from 2018. So, but at the same time, there's all the other questions about whatever underlying problem you may have once you've taken those injections, that it seems to make things worse. And that conversation is not even happening. So it's always written off that, no, he was actually sick already, and let's just brush everything under the carpet. Let's not have that discussion because, we trust the science. Well, of course you do if you're sponsored by Pfizer. If it means you're going to be winning awards, that's going to. And another journalist, let me just pull it up, that was very vocal on the on the vaccines and pushing them, the so-called vaccines, was Philip Nolan of the Mail. And I used to write for the Mail too, and I used to read Philip's stuff. Yeah, I like him. Again, this isn't really about any animosity towards the guy, apart from that he went full-blown, I trust the science. Here he is, I've completed my Vaccinia bingo card, AstraZeneca for the first 2 jabs, Moderna for the first booster, now Pfizer for the second, and he's got a big smiley face. Now, this was August 23rd, 2022 in Sligo. All right, so then he went really hard on anybody who said, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want to take part in this medical trial. We don't know any of the long-term effects. There are no guarantees. It's liability-free. Something stinks. The flu didn't disappear. So then this is one of his latest tweets. So some of you know I'm in hospital in Rome, will be for quite some time, can't really type a thank you. Now, he was flown home by air ambulance. I think he's still in hospital now. And now I don't know what happened to him. It might have nothing to do with all of those injections he took, but because of the stance that he took, he kind of owes us a bit of an explanation. You know, he was kind of, at one point he said he'd flown to all these countries and he was grand, and what were all those anti-vaxxers on about? Well, okay, well, then we're owed a little bit of an explanation. You know, is his current situation anything to do with all those injections? Spit it out.
Possibly, but see, there's none of these people going to admit it. You know, obviously, there's the pride element of it, and no one likes to admit they were wrong. Like even for myself, like when I look back on 2021, when the penny finally dropped for me, you know, when I was probably complying at the start, doing all the stuff I was told to do, all the idiocracy now when you look back at it now, but people feel stupid because they did all these things. They feel stupid because they took the jabs, you know, so they won't even admit it to themselves that they were wrong, let alone. So it takes a lot of humility to actually to admit you were wrong, and there's very, very few people that are willing to do that. And I think there's a lot of people are going to have to do a lot of soul searching with this. And just to get back to Eilish O'Regan there, like, she's the health correspondent for the Irish Independent. She has, for the past 4 years, in my estimation, she's like a big pharma salesperson. Now, she's never questioned the efficacy or of these so-called vaccines, nor has she highlighted the dangers that are involved in them. And you see all the studies coming out now of America and all the data and the stats, everything, irrefutable evidence, and even stuff that's making the mainstream media globally in relation to these vaccines. Like, I think it was even the CDC there during the week have made an announcement that Pfizer are going to have to put a label on all of these vaccines now about heart conditions and myocarditis for 15 to 24-year-olds. But will Eilish O'Regan put that into her column in the Irish Independent? She won't do that.
Well, the editor won't let her either. You know, this is the whole thing, because the book stops with the editor. The editor is the guy or the woman who says, this is what I want. This is what we're going to fill our newspaper in. So it's her and it's the editor. And as we saw, I mean, this is one of the things that alerted me. I mean, I had a little bit of help because I was working within the mainstream media. But when I saw that every newspaper had the same headline, that's when the penny dropped for me. I'm like, this is weird. How can they all have the same headline, which was get the jab? You know, how could they have all run with that? And it was very, very unsettling.
If you go back to 2021, I think it was 2022, I think was the Irish Times did some deal with Google, one of these news agencies. It was Google, but anyway, so they get their news feed from Google. So they so basically all the different media outlets, I suppose it's everywhere all over the globe, they're being fed, you know, this is your area, so you know it, but they're being fed the same news everywhere. So you look in the Irish Times or the Independent, and you see at the bottom from the New York Times or from Reuters or whatever, or from Google, whatever press agency they are. So they're not even doing journalism anymore. They're just kind of cutting and pasting out of press releases that they're getting from these news agents, global news agencies. So
yeah, that is how it works. You know, Reuters, AP, it comes in, you kind of break it down and put it into your own words, and things are very fast. It's the news cycle, and news has become incredibly dangerous. That's That's why I had to jump off the merry-go-round and say this is actually putting people's lives in danger. And, whatever about mistakes were made, let's say, right? Whatever about people believing, say, Dr. Fauci or what was coming out of the European Medicines Agency and repeating it. Now we have excess deaths. So now there's no excuse. Now we see that the mainstream media are actively covering their tracks. So they're covering up a crime scene that they are complicit in. This is outrageous. And people, because they rely on the mainstream media to give them their news and to try and give them some kind of fair and balanced reporting, don't quite, they know something's up, but I think they haven't quite grasped the extent of it, because again, you see in the alternative media, it's just a minefield out there as well. So it's very hard even for me to work my way through the alternative
Well,
media, because there's so many lies there as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the problem with the alternative media. Like when the penny dropped for me in 2021, I went on to the alternative media to try and find some answers. And like when you're suddenly after awakening, I suppose is the word we call this, to the world is not exactly as it seems to be, then you're literally believing everything that you're seeing on these alt media platforms, because and you get sucked in. But there's so much crap put into the alt media as well, and navigating the alt media and the mainstream media. The way I do it is I read all the headlines in the mainstream media, I look and take in bits of the alt media, and then I'll kind of try and absorb it all and formulate some sort of opinion. And then obviously you get to trust certain people who you feel are honest. And like, I mean, I suppose when I was awakening first, you'd be looking at like at Alex Jones, but I mean, I kind of see through him now as well. Like, I just
Yeah,
I
lots
don't
of
know.
truth and then a sprinkling of lies, and that's the issue. And he can get you into so much trouble with that. With those little few lies can really get you. But so much truth in there that it's so enticing. But again, it's kind of like WWE journalism, the way politics has gone now. WWE politics as well, riling people up, very, very dangerous. And what I find with Alex Jones is you can end up picking on the wrong people, because he's telling you that real victims are crisis actors, and then everybody joins in, and they're all picking on somebody going through something terrible and saying they're a crisis actor without proper evidence. I mean, that's what I've found once I've started picking through. I found I don't belong in the mainstream media. I don't belong in the alternative media, but I can't walk away because of what I have. There's too much, once you start cross-referencing and start looking at what we are faced with, I don't have all the answers. There's definitely a need for conversations like we are having now, just these simple conversations.
Well, this is it. You see, I'm a normal dude, play music and whatever, and that's my area of expertise, I suppose I might say. So one other thing I've become an expert in the last 4 years is an expert in bullshit and recognizing bullshit. And look, people say, "Oh, you're not a doctor or you're not a scientist." Oh, you get this. This is the sort of response that you get off people, or, look, I've heard it all, but what I feel I've learned over the past 4 to 5 years now is a bit of discernment and a good radar for bullshit, like, So that's the way I'm going to navigate through all of this going forward. And I think there's a lot of people, are, even some of my friends are like that now. They just look up at the mainstream media and look at the newspaper and the news they're being fed, and they're going, "This is bullshit," and with more and more people starting to see that, and they can see how they're being manipulated, and they can see all the different agendas that are behind it, in the mainstream. But of course, it's in the alt media as well. So look, it's just being able to kind of see, like, what's this person trying to do? What sort of reaction are they trying to get? What are they trying to convince you of, or whatever? What motivates them?
Yeah,
So
who's paying? Who benefits? What's the agenda? I mean, I've been caught a few times, like, even trying to weed out what's real, what's not. I've still been caught, and I think there's no shame in admitting any of this. we've all been conned at some point in our lives and probably will continue to be conned. And that's why we have to try and have these conversations, help each other out, cross-reference, and, see. And again, we mightn't even be too sure of ourselves, but that's the best we can do, really, while we're in this very strange terrain where literally it's the media we can't trust it. The media's captured. Our politicians have gone rogue. Even, if we look at Edward Timmins, his wife had a reaction and he's gotten a omertà. I mean, he's not talking about it. I mean, what's it going to take?
He's not talking about it. Well, the reason I think he's not talking about it is because of the criticism that he'll get from it. He'll be labelled an anti-vaxxer, possibly. It might go against, some of his other party members. God only knows, like, what sort of pressure that could be put on him if he was to go come out with something like that.
Well, he's probably not allowed. I mean, here he is. I just this video. Here he is talking about Stephen Donnelly. Now, again, he's trying to get voted. I think this is when he pipped Stephen Donnelly to the post. I mean, I think he got in on the 13th round or something. But let me just line that one up.
At that stage,
well, I'm glad that he bet.
Neither of us knew, so I wasn't taking anything for granted. But right now, I'd like to thank Stephen for the superb service he's given to this county over the last 13 years. And I'd also like to acknowledge Stephen Matthews, the great service he gave. And right now, I'd like to thank Stephen for the superb service he's given to this county over the last 13 years.
Okay, so that's him talking about Stephen Donnelly. So superb service, again, no acknowledgement of the chicane that went on.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad that Edward Timmins replaced Donnelly. Donnelly was an absolute disaster. And I mentioned already the debate in the Dáil in October 2020 or November 2023 about the excess deaths. The Minister of Health, Stephen Donnelly, didn't even show up for that debate. And then there was another time, or I think it was before that, when it was brought up about the excess deaths in the Dáil. I can't remember the TD that brought it up. I don't know, it was Peadar Tobin or somebody else, but Leo Varadkar said he was going to get on to the chief medical officer at the time, whose name was Breda Smith, and she was to come back with some sort of a report to Varadkar. And sure, nothing, absolutely nothing, crickets. Donnelly, I think there's a video of Stephen Kerr walking down the street with him there, asking him about the deaths and the vaccines and all the rest of that, and he's on his phone pretending not to see him or engage in him. And what I thought was very, very sinister was throughout 2023, I think it might have been 2024, like Stephen Donnelly was going all around the country opening up oncology units and cancer wings on all of these hospitals all around the country. It's like, did they know something? Was this where they know something was going to happen? All of this surge in turbo cancer. Like, you've got this guy Angus Dalgleish. This is the eminent professor of oncology in the Royal College of Surgeons or whatever in London, and he's calling out this turbo cancer thing after people that got the boosters, or recurring cancer by people that relapsing after getting the booster. And there's so many doctors all over the States that are calling out this phenomenon of cancer, and it's you wonder, why did they know this was going to happen, and is this why they're opening up all these oncology units?
Yeah, and funnily enough, what was I listening to the other day? It was a thing with Enda Kenny, and he was on with Ryan Tubridy, and they were doing a thing in collaboration with the Irish Hospice Foundation, and it was all about how to deal with end of life. And I listened to their conversation, and it really sounded so empathetic. They sounded like the kindest men, and I can see why the Irish audiences, would believe that these people care about them deeply, and their pain and their grievance and their suffering, their grief. And I think that is really confusing for people, because if you listen to the mainstream media or to these politicians, it sounds actually like they care. But when you pull back and look at the bigger picture and look at how the plan has been in place for a long, long time. They've been telling us practically 20 years that cancer cases are going to more or less double. Like, they have been telling us. And
yeah, well, if you look back there, I don't know, there was some sort of an article in one of the mainstream newspapers, I don't know when it was, 2022 or 2023, that Leo Varadkar and, I don't know, it was Helen McEntee were going for acting lessons, and Simon Harris were going for acting lessons. So they actually bring them out and give them acting lessons.
yeah.
So and you can even see it in some of their facial expressions, or the way they their delivery of information. It's almost like they're like clones of each other, the way they do it. It's like they've been how to do all of these things. Look, I'm not saying all of these politicians have written on it. Like, I mean, obviously they're not. I don't think anyone got a memo or anything like that. I'm sure there could be a few that knew. Look, there's certainly definitely. Look, I don't care what anyone says. There's people up there that know what's going on. They knew what was coming. They knew, and who those people are, I don't know. But this was planned. They knew what they were doing. But I don't think most of the politicians knew. I think they just went along with it.
Well, I think they knew. My reading on it now, looking at it, they seem to have nominated one politician to be the spokesperson, the kind of anti-vaxxer. In the UK, it was probably, well, Andrew Bridgen was the voice, the sole voice. In Ireland, it was Matty McGrath. And
yeah, but Andrew Bridgen got the job.
He did. You see, after the fact, and this is what people have to notice about so much of what happened, is, and this is what I've been noticing, is these personalities that they've pushed forward after the fact to tell us things that we want to hear. And my God, do we want it? We're hungry for it. We're thirsty for it. We want to hear it on platforms. We want to hear politicians say it. When they do, then we kind of get lulled into a false sense of security that something's happening. And I think we just have to be extra, extra careful about any kind of narrative that's put before us, especially in the mainstream media, because it's so compromised. And I know we're so desperate for some kind of justice. We probably will get a bone thrown, but I just think it'll be, you know, it won't be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And that's where we have to watch it. But listen,
what I think is important now at this moment of time, justice is one thing, and people do want justice, and they want the truth. But I think right at this stage in time, the most important thing is that they don't do this again, and then we can deal with the other afterwards. So the more people that know that these jabs are dodgy, and there's people getting sick and they're dying out of them, and we have 23,000 or whatever it is excess deaths in Ireland, then people are going to be very, very reluctant to take any more of these mRNA injections. And I think that's where we need to be. Well, I think we probably are there now anyway. I can't see anyone taking any more of them injections, really. I'm sure some people will, but that's
unless they're
a good start.
They could be forced next time. That's why it was so. That's why we were all jumping up and down the first time. Don't comply with tyranny. Don't comply, because it's going to be harder to say no the next time around. We've got a load of military-age men in the country who might enforce it. We don't know, but we do know what happened before was very, very dangerous. It did endanger lives. People are dying. We know the people who declined the vaccines were put in a very dangerous position too. We could have disappeared. Nobody would have cared, because of the brainwashing. And that's more that people have to acknowledge what happened and the way they behave. And like there's, as you say, it's a humbling experience. The whole thing is a very, very humbling experience to bring us back to God, which is the objective truth, the caring for, is this true? Is this actually true? That's when you're close to God. Like, and God can be a funny word, but for people who are like weird about it, the objective truth, really and truly. And when we're closer to that, we're in a lot safer position, because the further away we get and the more we defend a lie, it's very, very dangerous for people to be in.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Now, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I really, really appreciate you showing your face and your name, because I know it's not easy. Do you think you're going to have to face some kind of a backlash for it now, or what do you reckon?
Is this on? Is this going to be on camera or off camera?
Well, no, this is on camera. Yeah, this is still on camera.
but like, is this go out in the interview? In the interview,
Yeah.
back?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mhm.
Well, look, it's like this. Go back in 2020, 2022. Yeah, 2022.
Mm.
My daughter is in national school. Well, she was then, and they wanted to mask her, and I says, no, my daughter's not wearing a mask. So my daughter was. I stood outside the school on my own with a
Wow.
placard, and people laughed at me going by,
Yeah.
because I didn't want my daughter to wear a mask, and she was the only child in her class that didn't wear a mask.
Well
So I
done.
put it. And then I went into then a load of people saw me, and then they joined me. And this is before the people were this is before the hold the line. We went into the local town here in Blessing, and we stood outside in the square with placards. And we had a big banner, children need love and affection, not masks and injections. That was our banner,
Beautiful.
and
Yeah.
people joined in. We got abuse, people used to wind down the window and call us racist. Now I don't know how someone is racist that doesn't want their child to wear a mask or get injected. I don't see how they're connected. So that's the sort of shit that you
Yeah.
had to put up with it, and people laughing at me. And then my son came home from school one day. It wasn't too long ago. It could have been late last year, and said that one of the guys in his class said that they were laughing at you standing outside the school with your placard, driving by.
Mm.
Um, so look, people can laugh at you and mock you and ridicule you. Look, that's fine. I don't care. Look,
Mm.
one thing about all this is, like, I will say it to absolutely anybody how I feel about these injections and that whole scamdemic. I don't hold back. Um, so look, I'm only telling the truth. So
Yeah.
take it whatever way you like. And I'm not doing this to harm Edward Timmins or his wife. She seems like a lovely woman. But I just want the truth, and that's all I want. That's it.
Well, we've given Edward Timmins an opportunity. I mean, I think I put it to him, and I think I was, fair enough in asking him, really, and no response. So I just don't know why he's not responding. And that is really what we're pushing to the fore in this interview is why not? Why aren't we talking about this? Why are we pretending this isn't a thing? And, why have an Oireachtas Heart and Stroke group without mentioning the injections? It's just too peculiar. But listen, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. And let's just see. Maybe I will get a response. And maybe we can finally have that breakthrough collectively where people start talking. Thank you so much, Barry. Take care.
All right, Ashley, thank you.
Yeah. So